you know, like dealers or I mean, what do
Yeah,
you?
I worked with a large dealership here in Connecticut. He owned, I want to say maybe five or six dealerships, different
Oh,
dealerships, Jeep, Ford.
what was
I'm
the name
trying
of
to
the dealership?
It was Town and Country Auto back in
Okay,
the day. It's closed now.
okay, yeah, I'm sure they knew me and I knew them. Like I said, I started over in East Windsor, Connecticut, in 1976 or something, and I still go to that auction over there, Southern Auto Auction. It's probably one of the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah,
privately owned.
Southern Auto Auction.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I go there every Wednesday. Tomorrow I'll be out in Boston. And
Yeah.
then Thursdays I'm in Connecticut and then I'm done for the week.
Wow, look
Yeah.
at you.
Yeah, I've took this course about 20 years ago and I had my license actually, and I was just too busy doing auctions and I just let it lapse. So now I'm doing the course again. Kind of a
Yeah.
retirement thing.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, though. I
Yeah.
love it. Such an unusual occupation.
Yeah, you don't hear too much about it. Or too many, you don't meet too many auctioneers, I guess.
No, no, you don't. Now, I've not been to auto auctions now. I've been to furniture auctions, but
Okay.
not like antique auctions, but
Yep.
not not the auto auctions, but I
Yeah,
know
I used
Southern
to do a
Auto.
lot of household auctions back in the day, back, late 70s, early 80s. Sold out
Yeah.
a lot of furniture stores actually. And like I said, heavy equipment auctions and but I've been doing auto auctions. I used to do four or five a week, but now I'm kind of retired and just doing three.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
cool.
So those are the three auctions you're doing this week.
I do them every week, same
Oh,
three every
you
week.
do. Same
Yeah,
ones every week.
yeah.
Wow, look at
I
you
used to
go.
do four or five. I used to go to Long Island every Friday, but it's getting to be too much.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
thank you. I'm glad I asked you. I was dying
absolutely.
to know.
Yeah, it's cool. All
Yeah.
right, well, have a good class.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Hello, my friends. How's it going?
Hey,
Hi,
Rob.
Rob. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Good.
We're gonna get started in another minute or so. Hope everyone's having fun today on this wonderful Monday.
Absolutely. How about you?
Oh yeah, all the time. All right, so I got 6 o'clock here, so let's get started on this class. So talk to my friends. What's going on in real estate these days? What's the latest and the greatest? Who's got questions about the class?
Well, I've kind of updated you about myself by text, but I finished my 60 hours and I'm taking extra classes,
Uh-huh. Yep.
Right.
like you mentioned. So, and working on the Q Bank
Take
quizzes.
a bite.
All right, I'm headed out.
All right. Well, that's good. What do you think about the Q Bank quizzes? How are those working out for you?
I love them. I absolutely love them.
Do you think it's going to help you pass?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Right. And the questions are a
definitely.
lot harder than the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they're not straightforward questions like the book, and they're not right following right after the chapter that you just went through.
Right.
So it's definitely more challenging, but it's really, really helpful because then you can really see where you need to brush up more.
That's right. That's right.
What
All
is
right. Well,
Q-Bank questions?
so you're going to learn. Hello, Mona Lisa. Thank you for joining us. Right.
Welcome.
You're going to learn that we have a system called the Q Bank, right? And it is $99. You don't have to buy it. You don't need it. There are people who have passed the class and passed the exam without a problem um, by just doing what we do. But if you want to make it a little bit easier for yourself, there is a system called a Q Bank that I'll share with you. and that you will be able to even use for your class final.
Okay,
So, but welcome to the class.
thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome, Caddy, Cedric, Comlin, Daniela,
Hi, Rob.
Jennifer. Hello.
I
Myrna.
actually have a
Hello.
question.
All right. What do you got?
I know my 1 year is coming up, and I know I took a long break from March up until September. So my question is, when is my 1 year? Is it the end of January, or is it when I actually started class in February?
It's the day that I emailed you the books and the links to the classes.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Welcome, Myrna, Richard, Jessley, Valerie. Hello. All right. So who else? Who else? I hope I didn't miss anybody. Who else has questions or things they want to discuss about the class?
I have a question. Say if I get my 60, what is it, 60 hours, correct?
Yup.
And I still feel that I'm not ready for the test. Can I keep coming to class?
Yes, you can, but you have to do your class final and get the pre-licensing certificate within a year.
Okay,
Otherwise, there's a restart fee, right?
okay.
That was not my first choice to do that. But you know what? Since doing this since 2008, I was always like, yeah, don't worry about it. Whenever you get the class done. And I have people who stop coming to class and like 3 years later, hey, Rob, I want to start back up again. Okay. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd be like, wait a minute, this is not making sense because I'm paying people and Zoom and all this stuff. And people are like taking like the 7-year program. So I'm like, I got to just do it within 1 year. You got to get this done within 1 year.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's a restart fee, and then we will give you a discount though. If it's within like, I don't know, a couple of months that you're restarting, if you don't pass the class, you don't finish the class, and then you come back to me a year and a half later and be like, hey, Rob, I need to restart the class, then I'm like, you got to start fresh.
So thank you for bringing that up, actually, because I do have another question regarding that.
Yes.
So obviously fam stuff happened within family, so I was out for 6 months, but I do have about 13 classes left. Well, 12 with this one. Um, and I know you said if I don't finish the 12 classes, hypothetically, would I be able to pay a certain fee? That's what you said, right? I could pay actually for another month or so to finish up
For
the
another
class
year.
for
Yeah.
another
So
year.
really what I do is I've been doing, if you need another year or, even another month or 2 or 3, it's a $350 restart fee. I don't give you the new books. That's
Yeah,
just like, if you're like, hey, Rob, something happened in my life. And that's why I need another probably 3 months to make this happen. So
yeah,
there's a restart fee and street fee. Now, but remember, I'm going to reserve the right to tell everyone each case is different.
yeah.
Everybody wants to be treated the same, but everybody wants to be treated special. So that's what I'm going to tell you. You're all treated the same, but you're all treated special by Rob Rosa, right? I
Mhm.
want to try to help everybody, but you got to help yourself, and you can't take
Right,
advantage of me and the group either, because there's expenses and this is a business too. So,
right.
but that's what I try to do, help everybody out.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You're welcome. What else? What other questions do you have?
With the way the classes kind of jump around a little bit, if you end up
Well,
doing,
the classes don't jump around.
well, they did like our morning, our Tuesday, Thursday was going all the way up to 16, and then it jumped, like it missed like 3 for whatever reason, somewhere on the schedule. So I didn't get,
So I'm not aware of that because it's supposed to be 2 loops,
yeah,
right?
they didn't go in a loop, and I was confused by that, but so now
When
I'm
was
missing.
this?
This was just recently. It went from this last round on the Tuesday, Fridays.
This the math question, the math facts one,
No, we
Jennifer?
got all the way up to, because I keep track. So on 10-7, we finished yellow 14.
Now, is this you're going by the class schedule or you going by what Matt is
Well,
actually
the
doing?
class schedule is not always the same as what's actually going on. And then, yeah, then it skipped a couple. So now I miss like 17, 18, and 21. What's tonight? And I never know what's happening. So when you pop in, you don't even know what class you're going to be on, you know?
You don't? How come?
Like right now,
Why
I
don't you know?
sometimes the schedule's not there.
Right? But 90% of the time it is,
Okay. It's
right?
fine. I mean, I
So,
figure I can
yeah.
get the 60 hours don't have to be every unit, right? I mean, that could be multiple.
Yeah, so yes, it could be multiple. So Jennifer, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but what I am telling you is that yes, I give everybody a lot of flexibility. So 10% of the time, it's not going to match. The class schedule is not updated, or it's not going to match. If there's a holiday on a Monday, a lot of times on Tuesday, I forget to go in there. But 90% of the time, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and
Now,
I'm fine with it. I'm actually not
yeah.
complaining at all. But I guess my question is if I end up doing 60 something hours, but I miss unit 17 for some reason, does that matter? Or as long as I study the unit on my own and pass the test, you know?
Yeah. Yes. So, the state of Connecticut, I think they've sent out some emails to me and to the whole, all the web seminar or all the instructors saying, hey, we really want to make sure everybody's taking every unit, but it's not like a total requirement. The requirement is you do 60 hours and pass the class exam, right? That's the requirement. And so if there's a unit that you pretty much know and you don't feel like, you need to go and you just want to skip that unit, you can do that. The other thing is I feel bad that you're saying it's skipping around because I didn't know about that, right?
Well,
Now
it was going and going fine, and then all of a sudden I didn't ask. I just
yeah.
figured something. Maybe Matt didn't, wasn't teaching those units or whatever, and then I was going to try to get in. I'll get in on another time, which is fine. But
No, so for the sake of everyone, right? The units go Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday. And they should be going in a row. Sometimes I don't get the update from Matt necessarily. This is internal kind of thing. I don't
yeah,
get the update. I just put the schedule out there. I do what I think that he's working on, and then it turns out a little bit different. But the people who are coming to those classes Tuesday, Friday, they usually know. And I don't know, but I didn't know about anybody skipping any classes. And then the other thing is we know that Monday night, Thursday night, Saturday morning, those are on another loop. Monday, Thursday, Saturday. Cedric need to be on video, right? So that's kind of how that works. Once in a while, like I said, I try to give everybody, I give you tons of flexibility. So I take a little bit of flexibility too, and it's not always perfect. But they should not be skipping around. That's not a general term that should be used. Something is weird about that. And you should pretty much know. I'll give you 87.2% of the time, you should know what you're going to be doing before you come here because it's going to be on that class schedule and it's on there right now, right? But here we are. It's Monday night. I'm going to ask everybody, where'd you leave off on Saturday? So if Kristen didn't get as far through the book as we thought on Saturday, because we love the flexibility of giving everybody as much time as possible to ask as many questions as possible, then maybe it's not going to match exactly. But we still go in sequential order to try to make it as easy as possible for everyone. But I do appreciate the feedback and I appreciate you asking the question because it's kind of like one of those little gray areas. Like I don't double check your log to say you've done each and every unit. I double check your log to say, okay, you've done your 60 hours. And if the state of Connecticut asked me for that log, I give it to them. Right?
okay.
That's the important thing. Or if the state of Connecticut asks me for your PMI number and they double check to see if your log matches. Like, no lie, some of you came in at 8 after, right? So if you came in at 6:08 and you stay here till 8:01, you didn't do 2 hours and you better not put 2 hours because God forbid you do that 3-4 times. Now, let's say you're 30, 40 minutes deficient of 60 hours and you're thinking you did your 60 hours, state of Connecticut can run your PMI and be like, oh no, you only did 59 and a half hours. And now there's a big time problem. And there's a problem with you for submitting an application saying you did it and giving it to Rob. And there's a problem with Rob for him allowing you to do that. Then we all get in trouble. So we do not want to do that. Take a couple extra classes if you need to make up for those 30, 40 minutes. Does everybody know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it used to be, go ahead.
I think, Rob, even if you think you've taken the whole 60 hours, I'm still like me. I know I did, but I'm still taking extra classes to make sure that if there's any kind of shortages at all in the minutes or anything like that, then I'm covered.
Yeah, it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, I plan on taking, while I'm studying, I plan on popping in a class. So I'm not worried about the number of classes. You asked, so I asked.
Yeah, it's okay. And
I
then the
haven't had
other
an
thing,
opportunity to ask, so.
yeah, definitely. You ask whatever you want to ask, definitely. And then the other thing is just because let's say I give you your completion certificate and now here you are, you got to send in your application. That might take a week or two for PMI to get back, PSI to get back to you. You got to schedule your exam. That might take another week or two, depending on when you can go. That might be 3-4 weeks. So if I'm in your shoes, I'm keeping the juices flowing. I'm keeping the momentum going, and I'm taking another 2-3 weeks of classes, as many as I can, because it will help you in the long run. Plus, you get credit just in case. You can ask me or Trisha or Kristen or Ron or Matt any questions you want. You could be like, hey, I know we're doing unit 17, but I was studying unit 4 and I'm so stuck on this one question that I can't get right. Can you take 5 minutes to go over that? And there's no issue why we shouldn't be able to do that in class for everybody. In fact, that would be the best if people were coming into class like adult education and saying, hey, Rob, all right, I understand, this 60%, but here's the 40% I don't get. And we talk about it and we go over and we make sure that you feel comfortable and that sort of thing. So, definitely. And I'm happy Jennifer made those comments and asked those questions. And Wendy and Mona Lisa, whoever has questions, be straight up. Let's be transparent. Let's be straightforward. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. The computer's not perfect, but we're all going to keep trying to work this out together, right?
Yeah, and the reason I joined this, I mean, I like the flexibility and I like the way the program is. So it's not, I was just asking the question. That's all. It's
Yeah.
perfect for me. I like being able to ask questions. I like the flexibility. It's the perfect setup. It's a perfect setup.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, and I appreciate you.
Rob, I have another question because my first class was the math FAQ.
Oh man, you came in on that one?
Yeah,
Forget
man,
it.
I had so much anxiety, I had to go take a pill. So when will that class be again?
Well, for the morning class, it's going to be another 22 units, right? For the evening classes, well, I don't even know. I got to look to see what we're on today, but we'll be doing that. It's the end. It's right after the last unit. But at the same time, now remember, everyone, you don't get credit for this, but you can go on the YouTube playlist, right? And math FAQs, there's probably like 3 videos about math. And you could watch those as many times as you want. So there should be a video for every unit. So let's just say you're like, oh man, agency there's a lot. Rob said, which is the truth. There's a lot of questions on agency, and I just don't feel like I'm getting it 100%. But he just went over it today. What do I gotta wait another 20 weeks? No, you can either go on the morning class or you can go on the playlist that we shared with all of you. Right? You remember that, Mona Lisa? I'm gonna put poor Mona Lisa, put her on the hook. Or
Yes.
Cedric. Oh, you did? All right. Right.
Mhm.
So you saw that. Right. And you can go on there and you can see it. And so that's there for you to play all the time, right? Like you can go to sleep just hearing my voice on those videos. Just listening to the math FAQs. How nice is that? Isn't that so relaxing?
I have your video saved, Rob, so that I could just pull it up and go through the math questions, the math review that you
Yeah.
did.
I had one guy, he was truck driver, and that's what he said. He says, "Oh, Rob," he goes, I would just put your video. That's how I passed. I would just put your videos on all the time and be listening to you while I was driving cross country." And I was like, man, that sounds pretty cool, right? So, anyways, that's there for you. Don't forget those. That's pretty cool. What else? What other questions maybe do you have? But Mona Lisa, remember, and if all of you probably remember, who's our newest student? Is it Mona Lisa? It might be,
Probably. I started last Tuesday.
right? So, the first two classes, 3 classes, you're not gonna know what's going on here. This is craziness, right? This is craziness. We're lucky we know what's going on, right? Because like Jennifer brought it to light, we're scrambling, right? So Saturday, did Kristen do unit 20? Anybody come to class on Saturday?
No, we
Which
do unit 19.
19. Okay. You finished 19?
I think we finished 19.
Good. So we're going to do unit 20 today, even though on the schedule it says 21, right? We're going to do 20 today. That's the goal. 20 in the yellow and 14 in the red. That's the goal. Get that done. And then Mona Lisa on Thursday, because remember, Monday night, Thursday night, and Friday morning, that's one loop. They do the same loop. And then Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday. So hopefully on Thursday, we do Unit 21 environmental issues. And then on Saturday, you'd be back on math FAQs.
Okay.
So there you go. Make sense, everyone? Who's got questions? Who else has any other questions about anything? And please believe me, I don't get mad at you. There's no wrong answers. There's no like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Hey, it is what it is, right? Everybody's got to be happy. Good. All right.
So what book we working out of?
So usually the way it works, Mona Lisa, is the focus is the yellow book. That's the general. And then we do the corresponding unit most of the time, because not every yellow unit has a red unit, but then most of the time we do the corresponding red unit. So what we're going to do, and we'll do this together right now, is I'm going to go in here under our books, right? Let me do a little sharing here, little sharing action. We're going to do some reading together, my friends. This is exciting. Is this exciting or what? Is everyone ready? All right. So here we are. We're in the yellow book, land use controls and property development. Okay. So when you have completed this unit, you will be able to accomplish the following, right? You will be able to explain the concept of police power and the provisions under which it protects the public's health, safety, and welfare. You'll be able to explain zoning ordinances. You'll be able to work on permits, building codes, property use, right? Describe the issues and regulations involved in subdivisions. Explain non-governmental private land use restrictions, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. You'll identify the advantages and disadvantages of investing in real estate and describe the various laws and agencies which regulate land sales. All right. So here's those key terms, right? Now, if you're that person that you're not good on remembering things, remembering terms, right? Some people are good at remembering terms, but not the concept. Some people are vice versa on that sort of thing. You might want to do flashcards, right? Or, buffer zone, developer and subdivider. That could be a very, very easily be a question on a state exam. A developer does this, a subdivider does that, right? Because that's kind of a little tricky for some people. right? What's conditional use permit? You put, or you can go on the website that I give to everybody in the email. You'll see it tonight. And if you don't see an email by 9 o'clock tonight, the first thing you should do is check your spam, because most of my emails will go into your spam or junk folder. It's just the way that it is. I've been doing this for too long. I've sent out way too many emails for Gmail and everybody else to like me. They don't like me anymore, right? They think I'm just sending out too many and I'm not paying them enough money. If I probably paid them more money, they would take me off of their list. But anyways, you'll get an email tonight that has the CT real estate school.info with the schedule. And then there'll be another website that says realestateschoolcredits.com. And realestateschoolcredits.com is where you could buy math books, where you could buy the printed books that I give to you at a huge discount, where you could buy flashcards and all kinds of stuff. So if you had a little bit extra money, you feel like you need a little bit extra help, you might want to go to that realestateschoolcredits.com website. Make sense, everyone? All right. So here's what I like. Yes, I'm older, right? But believe it or not, I like the electronic books. And the reason why I like it is because they have extra stuff in there. So like there's a video. You're not going to find that in the printed book. Watch the video for the Unit 20 introduction. Right? It's going to tell you everything right there, quick, simple, and easy. All right. So before we get started, everybody ready? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right down my list here, and everyone's going to take some turns on some reading, and we're going to go from there. So we're going to ask you just to read a couple of paragraphs at a time, and then we will go from there. Sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
So everybody's got to go like this, la, 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 right? You got to get your reading linguistics down, right? How you feeling, Tracy? You ready? You warmed up? Right, Valerie, you warmed up. Josh, you warmed up. All right, let's see here. Who's first on my list is Myrna. So Myrna, if you can read the first two paragraphs, and then we'll talk about it and go from there. Myrna, you're muted. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I did, but I don't have my computer with me today.
Do you see it online?
Yeah, I cannot see it, that's why.
You can't see it?
No.
All right, Richard, you're the next in line, my friend.
Okay, buddy. In most areas of the United States, local governments have developed comprehensive planning that restricts how land may be used with the goal of orderly and planned growth. Real estate professionals must be knowledgeable about local land use restrictions in order to avoid showing a buyer a property that is not suitable for the buyer's intended commercial or residential use.
You read one more, please.
Yeah, I had flip. I'm on my book, so I had to flip the page. Sorry. The buyer of a home within a subdivision or planned unit development that is subject to a residential community association will also be subject to limitations that appear in the property deed or specific rules that are created and enforced by the association. An individual parcel of real estate may be subject to restrictions that a prior owner has included in the deed or a document that has been made part of the property's chain of title. There are advantages and disadvantages to investing in real estate. By making use of leveraged funds to benefit property appreciation tends to make it a desirable choice for many investors.
Very good. All right, my friend. So there's a little bit of an overview, right? What this is basically telling us, right, is that you can't do whatever you want with your land. You know, some people, the minute they buy their land, they might still owe 100% on it, and they want to be able to tell people, well, this is my land and I'll do whatever I want. That's not true, right? You can't do whatever you want. Or some people are looking for specific things. Like I have a gentleman, I have a house for sale in Waterbury that's on a very, very busy street. And there are single family homes on this street. There's businesses on this street. There's multifamily homes. There's residential, there's commercial, and he's telling me that he wants to buy this house and he wants to put an office in there, right? A tax office. And I told him, and he wants to make an offer. And I told him the first thing we really need you to do that would only make sense is for him to go to the town, do the town records, right? And talk to planning and zoning and make sure that he can actually do that. Because otherwise we'll pretty much just be spinning our wheels. Right? Does that make sense to everyone? All right.
It's funny that we're talking about this because I'm thinking about putting a, you know how they have them container homes?
Yep.
I'm thinking about putting one of them in my backyard. And I called
Right.
planning and zoning today, but I didn't get in touch with no one. Yeah.
So does anybody know most of the time, do you know what that would be called? They're not big around here, but it's big in like California and other states. You know what that'd be called? Anybody know? An ADU. So there's a lot of parcels, and there's a lot of parcels that are big enough in certain towns that they will allow an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. And that's usually your only chance to be able to either put or build a secondary home on your property, because most towns in Connecticut, they don't go for it, right? But that might be the opportunity to do that. Okay. So does that make sense? Right?
Yeah. Thank you
All
for
right.
that information.
No problem. So now, land use controls, learning objective. So we're going to explain the concept of police power and the provisions under which it protects the public's health, safety, and welfare. Right? And so, we know that land use is controlled through public and private limitations, right? The town is only going to, like we just talked about, only going to let you do certain things, and it might depend on federal, state, local governments, right? Now, this is interesting. You probably don't need to remember it, but look at how much land area the federal government actually owns. Now, a third of this is in Alaska, but you see the federal government actually owns, okay, about 29% of the land. The state and local governments own about 9%, and the Indian trust land is 3%. So that's what, 39 plus another 41%, right? About 41% is owned between the federal government, right? And the state and local governments and the Indian trust. So there's still a lot of land out there, and the federal government has been talking about starting to release some of that land. I mean, there's millions of acres out there, right? So you see, let's see here. In the United States, there's 2.3 billion acres of land that is privately owned right now. Okay. Actually, 60%, I'm sorry, 60% of the total 2.3 billion acres of land is privately owned. 60% is privately owned. So 40%, give or take, right? Okay. Now, we always hear in the news every now and then, and everybody has their own little spin on it. And we're not going to get political in this class because we don't have time for the baloney, right? And we don't have time for somebody to get upset, no matter what side you're on. The whole point is that federal government right now, they're talking about releasing some of that land, and they're talking about how foreign owned U.S. land is a concern. Right? What if there's a certain country that owns a lot of farmland? Could they actually disrupt our food supply, our chain of, food sources and so forth? Right? What if they own a lot of the railroads? What would happen? Right? What would happen? So, how does that affect the United States? So, anyways, That is something that's always in the background of people's minds as well. Who has any questions about this sort of thing? All right. And there again, you can go look up some kind of stuff there about the wonderful world of the census of agriculture and all the new reports. And, they're talking about reports from 2019. And I'm sure the world has changed a lot since then. So let's talk about how property development and use is regulated at every level. All right. So next person I have on the list is Caddy. If you can read the first two paragraphs about government ownership, please.
All right. Government-owned land is used for national parks and forests, military bases, federal office buildings, schools, museums, state parks, government buildings, and municipal parks and buildings, as well as streets, highways, and bridges. Beyond direct ownership of land, government controls. Oops, sorry, I was reading it on your screen. I apologize. Oh, okay. Okay. Buildings that are permitted at the local level. The police power of government is the source of its authority to create regulations needed to protect public's health, safety, and welfare. Through enabling acts, states delegate to counties and local the authority to enact, in keeping with general laws, the degree to which governmental bodies seek to regulate land's use, and is often a reflection of priorities of local residents. While there may be little objections anywhere to regulations that control noise, air, and water pollution, the topic of population density can elicit strong reactions.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So you see here, what we're talking about here is government ownership, right? So we know, well, what is the government owned, right? National parks, forests, military bases, municipal parks, buildings, streets, highways, and bridges, right? Now, they're also going to even talk about the use and disposal of hazardous materials, right? Now, we have this thing called police power, right? The source of its authority to create regulations and so forth through enabling acts. All right, so what I'm going to explain to you, and you see that's in blue and police powers in italics, so you need to know this stuff. Basically, the states delegate to counties and local municipalities. Okay, so this country, the very truth of it is that it's not and was not built as being a democracy. Okay. It was built on being a republic. And that's why it's called the United States. And if you look up republic, what they're basically talking about is that the majority of the power should reside, right, within the state. I personally believe in local government, and I don't mind as much. I don't like doing it. I don't like paying any taxes, but I know, we have to pay some taxes to have some bridges and highways and that sort of thing. Okay. So my personal opinion is, okay, yes, I think it's kind of good to have local and state governments be able to have their power. And that's what it is. Through enabling acts, the states delegate to counties and local municipalities. Everybody knows what a municipality is, or no? Who doesn't know? Everybody knows what's a municipality?
I do not.
All right. It's a town. It's a city, right? Now in the state of Connecticut, I believe it was in the 1960s that they got rid of most county government things. I think it was also a mistake because, every single town, which people will give you different numbers. The number that I know is that there's 169 towns, cities, and villages, or otherwise known as municipalities in the state, right? And they all have to have a clerk's office. right? They all have to have an assessor's office, where if you take someplace like Florida, that's done on the county level. So do you think a lot of money is saved that way? Yeah. But anyways, you need to know what enabling acts means. It means that the states delegate the power to enact ordinances. Everybody knows what an ordinance is? Who doesn't know what an ordinance is?
Was it like a law, main law?
That right, it's a local law, right? Usually when cities, so it's kind of weird, I guess, I don't know. When cities, municipalities, towns, villages, when they enact a law, they call it an ordinance. When the state does it, they call it a statute.
Mm.
Okay. So, anyways, the states delegate to the counties and local municipalities the authority to make these laws. Because you might be like, well, who told the town of East Hartford that they can charge me taxes on my car? You know, that might come out of my mouth, right? And they say, oh, well, the state of Connecticut told them they could do that. And that's what enabling acts mean. So does everybody feel comfortable with that?
Mhm.
All right. Now, again, the degree to which the governmental bodies seek to regulate land uses varies, right? And there's all different ways that they might do that. While there might be little objection anywhere to regulations that control noise, air, and water pollution, the topic of population density, lot and building sizes might mean, it depends what's important to people, right? So if you buy a house for $1 million that's near the ocean, right? And you are the second house. There's a house, there's your house, and then there's a little street, and then the house in front of you is in front of the ocean, right? Well, would you maybe right now you're saying to yourself, well, I wouldn't care if somebody wanted to put a extra floor on their house. What does that have to do with me? Well, if you spend $1 million and now all of a sudden that little cottage, somebody buys that little cottage that's in front between you and the ocean, and they decide to make it into 3 floors, is that going to bother you?
Yeah.
Right? So you just never know, right? Which way things are going to affect you, right? So does that make sense? Everybody understands enabling acts? All right, let's talk about the wonderful world of the comprehensive plan. So Mona Lisa, if you can read that first paragraph about the comprehensive plan.
Local governments, municipalities, and counties establish development goals by creating a comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, also known as a master plan, is not a regulatory document, but a guide that tries to anticipate changing needs. The comprehensive plan usually is long-term, perhaps 20 years or longer, and often includes a general plan that can be revised and updated more frequently, B, plans for specific areas, and C, strategic plan, systematic planning for orderly growth usually considers the following elements.
That's fine. Thank you. All right. So remember, each town now in Connecticut needs to have a comprehensive plan. So we got to have 160 something comprehensive or master plans that is trying to anticipate changing needs, right? And is trying to look out 20 years into the future. Okay. And they're going to look at things like land use. Well, how much land might be needed for residential, industries, businesses, agriculture. And, there's going to be some towns that they're going to do a great job and understand this. And then there's going to be other towns that have like 10, 15,000 people. And, they're lucky they have 3 people that are going to volunteer to do this, and they're not going to really know how to do this. And that's why sometimes it just doesn't make sense, right? But this is what we need to have for each town in the state of Connecticut. Housing needs, they're going to talk about of present and anticipating residents, right? What about declining neighborhoods? How can those be rehabilitated? New residential developments. What do you think? The state of Connecticut's been doing awesome on that, huh? Everybody's happy? We got plenty of housing, affordable housing for people. Isn't it awesome?
Is it really affordable?
No,
Exactly. I'm being sarcastic. I'm being very, very sarcastic because I think that we are terrible at this. In fact, I read an article the other day, we're sixth. We have the sixth oldest housing in the United States, meaning that most of the highest percentage of our housing was built like in the 1950s, 1960s. And when was the last time you saw a big development of 40, 50 new houses that are affordable,
Hmm.
right? And I'm not talking about rentals, right? I'm talking about residential home ownership, for starter homes. But anyways, each town should also look at the movement of peoples and goods, highways, what's needed for parking, pedestrian, community facilities. What do you need for schools? What do you need for libraries? I'm not sure what's going on. Some of you might get mad at me, but in today's world, I don't see, and I love books. I can go in Barnes and Noble and be there the whole day and probably get hardly any work done. Love books. But do we need millions and millions of dollars to be spent on libraries these days of our taxpayer money? That's not free money. That's you going to work and part of your money going for libraries. I don't know. Hospitals, to me, right? A lot of them are being run as for profit. So I have a little bit of a hard time with that one. And I'm loving when I see these different medical facilities being built to get people away from everybody who's sick going to Hartford or St. Francis Hospital, right? Maybe you have a little, more than an urgent care center. You have a medical care center in this town, in this town, in this town. I think it's great. Recreation facilities, fire and police stations, water, right? Water we take for granted. Flood management. Anyways, so the whole point is you have this comprehensive master plan. And I used to think it was kind of interesting when we used to sit over at the pizza place and I tell everybody, look out the window. Now here we are, we're sitting in a restaurant. Okay. And right across the street, you see, if you look straight ahead, you saw multifamily homes. And then you look to the left a little bit, you see single family homes. Then you look to the right, you see industrial. Then you look all the way to the other side and you see office. And I'm like, okay, so who set up the plan for this corner? Right? Does that what I just told you, where you have a restaurant, you have industrial, single family, multifamily office space, all in the same quarter mile. Is that good master planning? No, that's why you go to some towns and it's so beautiful because, oh, this is the whole area for residential. Here's the a whole area for restaurants and entertainment. Here's the whole area for office parks or industrial. And it's built much nicer. And there, what we're going to talk about is buffer zones and that sort of thing. So who has questions about the comprehensive plan? Right? And so like it talks about here, this plan, right, is drafted by the Planning Commission and is usually approved by the city council or other governing body, and they have public hearings and that sort of thing, right? And it's supposed to help the town for growth and development. Make sense? All right. In practice, they talk about the fire of 1871. There's all these fires at the end of the 1800s that burnt down all these wonderful places. And what did they do? Right? They put together a whole new comprehensive plan in Chicago area. All right, let's talk about zoning. So with zoning, we're going to talk about ordinances. We're going to talk about permits, building codes, property use, and that sort of thing. All right, so I think you're next on the list, Josh, if you can read the first couple paragraphs.
uh, zoning ordinances implement the comprehensive plan and regulate and control the use of land and structures within designated land use districts, in part by separating conflicting land uses. If the comprehensive plan is the big picture, zoning provides the details that carry out the comprehensive plan. Although no nationwide and very few statewide zoning ordinances exist, the federal government and the states regulate land use through coastal management, environmental laws, and scenic easements.
That's fine. Thank you. So again, zoning ordinances, right? They're part of the whole thing about looking at the big picture. And sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't, right? But they might affect things like permitted uses of each parcel of land, lot sizes. How big do new lots have to be? What types of structures can you have there? What might be the building heights that are acceptable, like we just talked about? What might be the setbacks? I mean, sometimes you see a house or a building, it's like right on the street. It's like, you feel like it's 6 feet away from the street. And sometimes you see cars that have gone right into these buildings. It's crazy. What's the style and appearance of these structures, right? What's the density? So who can explain the density? Can anybody explain that?
Would it be the number of buildings or structures within a certain area of land?
It could be that, but it's also the amount of square feet or the footprint, right? So, like an example, people don't realize that it's actually more expensive to build the most expensive style of house to build is a ranch. Does anybody know why it's the most expensive to build?
Because it's spread out on one level, it just covers everything horizontally instead of vertically.
Yep, you
The
have
amount,
the more foundation, concrete, very expensive, more digging for the foundation if you're putting in a basement, which around here most houses would have that, right? More foundation, right? More roof line. So you have to have more roof line, you have to have more shingles. Anyways, it's typically considered to be the more expensive thing to do. And the ratio of land area to structure area is smaller, right? Lower density. So some places they want you to have more land that's not developed. That would be the density. And then the protection of natural resources. So remember, they want to make sure that zoning ordinances conform to the comprehensive plan, but they remain flexible to meet the changing needs of the population. So once again, if you want to, just for the sake of things, is you can go on these websites, right, for Pittsburgh or St. Louis, or go for your town, right, and look up the zoning ordinances. It's pretty interesting stuff, right? All right, who's got questions on that sort of thing? Anyone? All right. So, in practice, changing nature of the U.S. economy has resulted in a lot of vacant factories and warehouses in many cities. Some cities have revised zoning ordinances for new residential or commercial developments that were once strictly for industrial use. So sometimes they get tax advantages and you get developers coming back into these cities, and then they build these beautiful new housing types of things. And they're supposed to be affordable, and it would be nice if we had more of those, right? In some cities, rundown waterfront areas have become attractive recreational spaces. Like example, they just built a little campground over there in East Hartford, that, believe it or not, people who go along the Connecticut River can stop at and stay overnight, because that was one of the longest spans of waterfront. I think it was like 60 miles or 90 miles. So they cut it in half and put a campground there. so that people who are doing, going along the river would be able to stop, which is kind of interesting. All right, zoning classifications. So there's all different kinds. Of course, there's residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural uses, but then there's subclasses. So like example, residential area may be subdivided for detached single family dwelling, semi-detached with not more than 4 dwelling units, low-rise apartment buildings, high-rise apartment buildings, PUDs. So who wants to read for PUD? I got well, let me just go over PUD. PUD is too easy, right? Planned unit development. So you need to know planned unit development is where it's like a mixed use. They'll have residential, commercial, and public areas. So does anybody know of a PUD around where they live? There's not a lot of them throughout around us, but there are definitely a few. Anybody know about a PUD?
Well, in Bristol, down on Main Street, they built new buildings, like 3 new gigantic buildings down on Main Street, and they have like retail and restaurants on the first floor, and then one building has offices, and then another building is scheduled to have apartments.
Right.
So wouldn't that be mixed use purposes?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Rob, what about West Hartford, Farmington Avenue, West Hartford Center?
Blueback Square.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of those. Now, when I think of PUD, I'm really thinking about where people are actually buying the units, but yes, there are rentals as well, right? And there's going to be different zoning modifications or regulations that have to be modified for PUDs, because maybe, right, a certain area like Black Square or this area in Bristol, maybe it was just slated at one time for office, or for retail, and now they had to add residential, right? Or they had to add more of a commercial or that type of thing area.
But
So
there's
yeah.
also in that area, there's also homes, like single family homes and multiple family homes, like within a block
Mhm.
of that area.
But remember, it's a development where a developer, he or she had this vision, right? Like
Okay.
Blueback Square, like Minichog Golf Course, right? Like there's a village of houses in Manchester, right? That, okay, there's commercial and residential, maybe sometimes like miniature golf course, right? There's a golf course, there's houses, there's a little pro shop, there's a little clubhouse, and there's a little restaurant, right? And so there's certain restrictions there. You can only maybe paint your house a certain color, right? You have to allow, understand that people are going to be playing golf right on the other side of your land in a common area, and you can't stop them, right? Maybe you can't park on the road. Maybe, so there's all different types of zoning and rules, private restrictions that come across with PUDs. Make sense? And sometimes they look like apartments. Sometimes they look like condos. Sometimes they look like what you might think a condo looks like. Sometimes they look like single family homes. Sometimes they look like multifamily homes. It doesn't go by how they look. Okay. All right. Zoning ordinances. So Valerie, if you can read this paragraph about zoning ordinances. Are you able to do that? Yes, no. I think you might be muted. Cedric, can you try reading about zoning ordinances?
Yeah, sure. Meet both the growing. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. To meet both the growing demand for a variety of housing types and the needs for innovative residential and non-residential development, municipalities have adopted ordinances for subdivisions and planned residential developments. Some municipalities are also use buffer zones to ease the transition from one use to another. A buffer zone is typically a strip of land separating land dedicated to one use from land dedicated to another use. For example, landscape parks, playgrounds, and hiking trails may be used to screen residential areas from non-residential zones. Certain types of zoning that focus on special land use objectives are used in some areas. These include
Right.
Bulk zoning to control density and avoid overcrowding by imposing restrictions such as setbacks, building heights, and percentage of open area, or by restricting new construction projects. Aesthetic zoning to specify certain types of architecture for new buildings and new communities, as well as historic districts, and incentive zoning to ensure that certain uses are incorporated into developments, such as requiring the street floor of an office building to house retail establishments.
Very good, sir. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So kind of just going
Hey, I'm
back in.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll read the next one. I apologize. It was on my end. My bad.
No, no problem. No problem. Thank you. So remember, like I talked about when I was saying, yeah, here we are sitting here in this banquet room, taking a look at all the different zoning. If we just look out the window and we can see how there were no buffer zones, right? A buffer zone, like maybe some lands, could be a park, a hiking trail, some woods that will be kind of like that buffer between the industrial and the residential, right? To be between the mall and some housing, right? And so there's all different kinds, right? And so, like we talked about, there's bulk zoning that we'll talk about building heights and so forth. Aesthetic zoning, like this is a historic district, and maybe you can only build homes that look like colonial or federal looking homes, right? And then incentive zoning, where maybe you have to have a certain type of industry. Maybe it's a biomedical or technology area that will be incorporated so that people can get tax advantages. So does that make sense to everyone? Who's got questions on that? All right, Valerie, if you can read about constitutional issues, the first paragraph here.
Yes, I can. Zoning can
Thank
be
you.
highly controversial issue and often raises questions of constitutional law. The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution prevents the states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. The ongoing question is, how can a local government enact zoning ordinances that protect the public safety and welfare without violating the constitutional rights of the property owners? Due process of law means that citizens can discuss zoning ordinances before they are enacted by public hearings. Those affected by the proposed change are provided notice of such hearings and have the opportunity to attend and be heard.
Right. So if we think about that, here's the example. Here was this gentleman. He came from a different country about 30 years ago, right? And he came with nothing, and he worked his butt off, and he saved his money, and he bought some land. Okay. And so for about 20 something years, he was paying taxes on this land. Now you have a small town up near Yukon, 15, 20,000 people in this town. And somebody came up with this idea, hey, we're going to create this certain area of town, Well, we're going to make it the biomedical and technology incentive zone. And it's going to want to make companies who are biomedical or technology come and open up offices in this area. And we're going to give them tax benefits because it's going to create a lot of jobs. Now, on the surface, what I just told you sounds good, right? Oh, we're going to create a lot of jobs and, we're going to give tax benefits. Well, here's the truth. Here's the context of the story. Here's the insight of it, right? Well, the truth is that number one, it's not the town or even the state's job to create jobs. Okay. You're not going to have someone who is in this small town that he or she doesn't own this land, but he wants to take someone else's land and change it into this biomedical area, incentivized area. He wants to change it into that zoning. And so now this gentleman who came from this other country that's been paying taxes for 20 something years, well, he's trying to sell that property and make a little bit of a profit. And so if a builder came along that wanted to build condos or apartments or houses or housing for UConn students, they would no longer be able to do it because they changed the zoning of it to this biomedical and technology zone. So what right does this guy who's sitting in this town that just, he's on this town committee, what right does he have to take my client's land and put that label on it? Okay. And so here's where the next paragraph comes into place. Any land use legislation that is destructive, unreasonable, arbitrary, or confiscatory usually is considered void. Furthermore, zoning ordinances must not violate the various provisions of the state's constitution. Commonly applied tests in determining the validity of ordinances require that the power be exercised in a reasonable manner, be clear and specific, be non-discriminatory, promote the public health, safety, and general welfare under the government's police power, and apply to all property in a similar manner. So you see, they put this whole map together where like 60% of this biomedical and technology zone included my client's 13 acres, right? And so now they did a public hearing. And I had to, he doesn't have great English. So he asked me to go with him. And I got up and gave a little presentation and explained why we thought it was unfair that this gentleman, we actually have the land for sale right now. We have leads of people who were saying that they might want to build some condos. They might want to build apartments. They might want to build single family homes. And to do this to his land where 60% of the 100% is his land is not fair to him. And it's one thing if the town wants to do it and still keep it open for its current zoning, but just for them to change the zoning without any type of real help to him is not fair to him as a U.S. citizen. Right. And so from there, the program just went to the wayside as far as I know. As far as I know, they never did actually change the zoning, but it should hopefully give you an insight.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Isn't that better than eminent domain? Because they could have come and said that due to his land being in a location and meeting the needs of the majority of the town in the general public, because his land could be used for something that's more useful, like creating jobs and things of that nature, lessening poverty and so on. And they can pretty it up and present it any way that they please, really, because I've read some things where they use eminent domain to take people's lands, and then the purpose that they use it for was like deemed useless years later. So couldn't they have done that to him instead of taking 60%, I guess? is what I'm
Well,
saying. Not that it's fair.
yeah. I mean, because of what happened, which I think we're going to be talking about in a little while, because of what happened in New London so many years back, eminent domain is kind of hard to do these days. They still do it, but they have to give reasonable value for the land. And he was not trying to be greedy guy. He'll take, you want to buy it for reasonable value? Go ahead. But they didn't want to buy it. You see, that's why I think it's kind of a little bit crazy that, you kind of have 3, 5 people on this planning commission. One of them has a dream that somehow he's going to be able to entice, let's just make it up, Beer, Bayer, or he's going to be able to entice some new medical company to come in and now he's helped the town create all these new jobs. Well, first of all, they're not really creating jobs. And in my opinion, they're usually hurting the citizens of the town by giving tax advantage, giving tax abatements and all that kind of good stuff. So, yes, could they maybe done eminent domain, but they would have had to pay him a reasonable value. Right. And they have to show how they come up with those numbers. And he was willing to sell it for a reasonable value. But they didn't want to do that. They just want to put a label, like the big boss just come in, put a label on the land. And now, yeah, we don't care that you've been paying taxes on that land for 20 something years. This is the only thing you can do with it. Right. So it's kind of weird stuff. So, and then this is where we talk about, so the taking, right? Is a zoning restriction ever an unconstitutional taking that entitles a property owner to compensation for resulting loss in property value? So unlike the loss of ownership, that when a title is taken, zoning leaves title in the landowner but limits the use. That's what we're talking about here. Limits the use of the property. Right. And on June 23rd, 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court decided the case of Murr versus Wisconsin by refusing to grant any relief to the property owner in the form of compensation for a diminution in the property's value created by a state law. So the inheritors of 2 adjoining but separately titled and separately taxed parcels were prohibited from building a structure on one of the parcels because there was already a structure on the other parcel and the 2 parcels were under the same ownership. But anyways, so sometimes it depends. There's so many different ways you can look at it. But we have to be careful about too much government involvement in the marketplace, because most of the time they will mess things up. Right. And a lot of times they're saying it's for the sake of the public welfare, but we don't always see that. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. Zoning permits. So let's talk about the different types of zoning permits. Compliance with zoning can be monitored that a property owner obtain a permit before beginning any development. Right? And usually you need permits, building permits, even for improvements. If it's something structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, you usually need a permit. And if you don't get one, it might help you, right? And so even when you're building a new development, a permit will not be issued unless the proposed development conforms to the permitted zoning. And a zoning permit is usually required before a building permit will be issued, right? So they're going to look at that. Okay. Is it within the zoning of what you're trying to do? And usually it's pretty darn easy, but sometimes it's not. Just like this guy who says he wants to buy this house and turn it into an office building. Okay. So let's talk about non-conforming use. So who's next here that we have? Non-conforming use. Daniela, can you read the first 2 paragraphs here? Are you able to do that, Daniela? Hello, Daniela?
I don't think her mic is working.
Ah. All right. Daniela, are you there? Hello. I don't see her moving her lips. All right, Tracy, can you do that? Can you read the first two paragraphs?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty. Frequently, a lot, a lot or an improvement does not conform to the zoning use because it existed before the enactment or amendment of the zoning ordinance. Such a non-conforming use may be allowed to continue legally as long as it complies with the regulations governing non-conformities in the local ordinance until the improvement is destroyed or turned down, or until the current use is abandoned. If the non-conforming use is allowed to continue indefinitely, it is considered to be grandfathered into the new zoning. Real estate professionals should never assume or allow their clients to assume that an existing non-conforming use will be allowed to continue. A prospective buyer should verify with the local zoning authorities the conditions under which the use is allowed to remain or whether change are permitted.
Very good there, sir. All right. So remember, non-conforming use. It's kind of like that whole thing about grandfathered in, right? That whole thing about grandfathered in, where basically they're saying as long as it complies with the regulations, right, it can stay. Okay, as long as it complies with the regulations, it can stay. But once it's torn down or the current use is abandoned, now they will not be able to rebuild. Right. So I don't know, let's just make pretend that you had a little grocery store in a residential area that's been zoned residential, right? Well, they might say, hey, once this little grocery store goes, that's it. Now it has to be all residential. And we should be careful, never assume nor allow that we're going to answer them quick, simple, and easy. Right. So in many cases, what you want to do is tell the potential client or the prospect or your customer or whatever it might be, hey, you know what? We really need to find out from the town hall. And I'm willing to go with you and try to find out. I'm willing to help you. But you do not want to be that person who's on point that you're going to be the one to do this. Because if you are, right, well, what could happen? You can call up somebody from the town hall, right? At that particular moment, maybe you're going to call them up and they're getting ready for dinner. I mean, for lunch, right? They're getting ready for lunch and it's 10 of 12 and you're like, hey, I have somebody wants to know if they can put a horse farm over here and they have 3 horses. Can they put the 3 horses there? And the person's like, a person who's been working there for 30 years says, oh, yeah. I know that parcel. Yeah, they could put 3 horses and goes to lunch. Right. And now this person buys this property and they go to put 3 horses and the town's like, oh no, what are you doing? You can only put 1 horse here. Well, no, my real estate agent called the town hall and they had told her 3 horses. And now come to find out you can only put 1. Well, is your client going to be furious with you? Are they going to be maybe want to sue you? Maybe want to sue your real estate company? All right. So be careful about that sort of thing. You're never going to be able to get things in writing. You want to help your client. You want to be the best real estate agent ever, but you need to make sure that you understand you're doing the right thing and that you're getting the right information. Make sense?
In a situation like that, like what would you do?
Well, I did it today. I said, hey, listen, if you want to meet at the town hall, we can do that. And it's so funny. Like here's these buyers, they don't want to do that. Right? No, they want you to go get the info, but what if you give them the wrong information verbally? So unless you can get something in writing, maybe you can find something in writing, but you want to be really, really careful. I even tell my buyers, hey, listen, if you want to, I can go to the town hall with you and we can look up the building permits and we can make sure that you understand when the last time that the house is approved for everything and blah, 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 blah. Nah, we'll be fine. I'll just have my attorney see if they can look into it. Or they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then they never do it. Like I'm telling you, like 1 out of 100 will do that. And to me, I'm not encouraging anybody not to do an inspection. At the same time, I don't do inspections when I buy properties, but I go to the town hall and I look to find out, are there any open violations? When was the last time a permit was taken for the roof? When was the last time a permit was taken for the boiler? That's what I look at. Right. So I think it's
That's
kind
what
of,
we do in the law office is we obtain zoning compliance letters.
is this for real estate closings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we obtain the zoning compliance letters and also if there's any like you said, anything that has happened out of the ordinary, we go to the fire marshal, we just talk to them. It's a whole process.
right. So, I mean, and that's good that you do that because I have found and seen that not all attorneys' offices do it the same, right? Not all attorneys' offices do it the same or do it at all, right? So some attorneys' offices, they find out every little thing, which is pretty darn cool, and some of them don't.
Yeah, I pretty much know how to look up zoning and any ordinances and any permits on every city within Connecticut.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So does anybody have any questions about this?
I
All right.
do. I have a
Yes.
question. How would you go about? I know it does a little quick mention at the bottom. Okay, no. Can you guys go to your room? Oh, that's cute. That's really cute. I'll check you out in a second, but I need you to give me a few more minutes. Sorry. I know there's a quick snippet about zoning hearings and things like that, but how would you go about getting zoning changed in your okay? In your municipality, how could you get them to change the zoning laws if you've done your due diligence and see that it would benefit the
We're going to go over
homeowner, it
that in
would
a few
benefit.
minutes. Well, we
Okay,
don't
sorry.
do it as real estate agents, but we can help lead the client the right way. We can give them a little bit of information. Really, we should put them in touch with a real estate attorney who will know more, who will be able to help them more, but we can give them the basic generalities of it. So we're going to go over that in a little bit, Valerie, which is good stuff that you mentioned. Right. So that's non-conforming use, right? As an example, under a city's original zoning ordinances, a small grocery store, as well as within a commercial zone, when the zoning map was changed to accommodate an increased need for residential housing, the grocery store was grandfathered in. That would be considered non-conforming use. So you want to remember non-conforming use grandfathered in. Okay. Now, here we go, Valerie, zoning hearing board. Okay. Most communities have a zoning hearing board or a zoning board of appeal. and they will hear testimonies about the effects a zoning ordinance may have on a specific or on specific parcels of property. A petition for an exception to the zoning law may be presented to the appeals board as described next. Okay, so there's variances and there's conditional use permits. Okay, so let's talk about those. We talked about non-conforming. Now let's talk about variances and conditional use permits. So once a plan or zoning ordinance is enacted, property owners and developers know what they can and cannot do on their property. Nevertheless, a property owner may want to use the property in a way that differs to some degree from what the zoning would allow, right? And so this might mean that they need to get a conditional use permit or a variance that does not allow, the current zoning requirements. So conditional use. So you need to know the difference between these two. Conditional use or special use is basically an allowable conditional use within that zone. So does it make sense, right? A house of worship, a church, a daycare center, a community center in a residential district. Yes, that makes sense. But what if you wanted to put a tire factory, right? That would be like an extreme. Doesn't make sense. So if it makes sense, they might allow you to put it in there. And most towns, right, they are going to have a list of allowable conditional uses. And sometimes they're going to want you to give more information before they give you the full permit and that sort of thing. Now, if it's something totally not within the use. So I had this example, right? Before I read this, my real life example is that we bought this property, right, with a building with a pizza place and a liquor store. So we wanted to take this liquor store out because the guy who owned the building owned the liquor store and he was moving to Florida, and we wanted to put in a laundromat. And we were going to give discounts to disabled and senior citizens, and we were going to do delivery to disabled people. And there was no laundromat within like a half a mile from all these multifamily houses, and we thought it was the best thing going. Well, then before we bought it, we found out that it was not in the zoning. You could have a pizza place, you can have a hair salon, you could have a barber shop, you can have a nail salon, you can have an office, you can have we're talking about a long list, but you couldn't have a laundromat. So anyways, what did I have to do? Right? Is I had to, before we made the contingency in the purchase and sale agreement that we wanted to get approved by the town before we purchased it. And we went to the zoning board of appeals, and I did a presentation about all the wonderful things and how it was going to be better than having a liquor store there, and there wouldn't be people just hanging out over there like there were in the front of the liquor store and leaving trash with little nips all over the place and all that good stuff. And they loved it. And we got approved like really very quick. And so we received a variance, and then we ended up buying the property. Now there's such a thing called, and then there's the rest of the story, but we won't go into that right now because that will just get my, for some of you that heard that story before, that will get my, what do they call it, blood pressure going up. Because what happened, just to give you the quick synopsis, is that we bought the building, and then we found out, because of the way the building inspector, what he wanted from us to make everything ADA compliant, which, sounds nice, but the way he was handling it seemed not nice, and it was going to cost us almost $80,000 worth of repairs. So then we sold the building. So we bought it thinking we're all set, because it was a liquor store and there were people in and out of there all day, every day. And we weren't going to have a problem by helping the community and put in a nice laundromat that's clean and that's going to be helpful to people. We were going to be helping things, but the building inspector enacted the old ADA stuff and was going to come up to over $80,000 worth of things, whereas we could have just kept the liquor store there. So we decided to sell the building. But anyways, we're not going to go down that road today for the sake of time and my blood pressure, right? Because that was a money losing situation. But anyway, so to qualify for a variance, the owner must demonstrate unique circumstances that may make the variance necessary, right? Or may help him because there's a burden from that zoning. Maybe it provides relief if an existing zoning regulation creates a physical hardship. So in this example, they say, hey, if an owner's lot is level next to a road, right? But slopes downward steeply 35 feet away from the road, and the setback specified in the zoning ordinance is 40 feet. The zoning board may allow a variance so that the owner can build closer to the road than the setback allows. So that's kind of an interesting one, right? All right. So who has questions on that sort of thing? Anyone? So does everybody understand both variances and conditional use permits are issued by zoning boards only after public hearings? Owners of nearby properties must be given an opportunity to voice their opinions.
Okay. So I guess my question really was like, you remember how when you were mentioning the situation in California where someone could buy like a container home? And I remember reading an article some time back about people were having issues with that whole ordinance due to individuals were erecting like little homes or small homes, whatever they're called. I can't think of it right now. And
Yep.
then renting those homes out.
Yep.
Well, not even renting, like Airbnb-ing them and stuff like that. So I guess my question really has to do with, can you get the original zoning like changed so that you can, I guess, not only just build something and put a different, like in your situation with the whole liquor store versus laundromat. And of course they wanted the liquor store to stay. They make more money that way, but that's a whole nother subject matter. But like, say you want to be able to do something like that. Like you purchased some land where it's a residential area, but you want to erect like multiple small homes or tiny homes and then use it as like a B&B type of situation, which kind of turns it into like a, I guess, hotel ordinance type of thing. I don't know how to explain it.
Right. No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, can you do it? Why not? Can you go to the Board of Appeals and see if you can influence or persuade them? Why not? Will it may be an uphill battle? Probably depends on the town, right? I mean, it's really kind of you can go and you could try to persuade them, you can try to influence them, but if they don't think it's a good idea, they won't do it. Right. And some towns are really tight on things, and some towns anything flies, lets anything fly. So again, the owner or the potential owner, they're the ones who are going to have to go, or they're going to have to hire an attorney to go for them. I've never really seen them. A real estate agent will go as kind of like an additional type of person. I mean, I went for that gentleman for that land in Tolland. This was probably like 15 years ago. But it just depends, and you got to be a little bit careful because you don't want to be accused of behaving like an attorney. You don't want to be accused of doing something outside of your knowledge of your realm and actually hurting that person. Like, God forbid you go and give this presentation for your client and then it gets denied. And they're like, the person comes back at you and says, well, you don't know, you did, your presentation was terrible and that's why we didn't get it. And I'm going to sue you because you told me that we can make this happen. And, who knows what could become of it. So you have to be very, very careful.
So don't overstep your scope of practice. Make sure you do your due
Yeah.
diligence and leave it in the hands of the professionals who are actually specialized in that area.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What's it gonna, I mean, just don't overstep your bounds, like you said, Valerie. Exactly. All right. So now you know the difference between a conditional use permit and a variance. Anybody have any questions on that? All right, let's keep on rolling, my friends. We're getting there. Building codes and COs, right? A CO is a certificate of occupancy. So most municipalities, they have enacted ordinances to specify construction standards that must be met, right, when repairing or erecting buildings. These are called building codes, right? Now, do people buy homes that are not up to code?
No, shouldn't.
Yes.
Right?
You
So
can.
people
Yeah.
people do it every day.
Yeah.
Because think about it this way. Like here I was this morning, I went to 6 apartment buildings to help a couple of tenants, right? And I probably all 6 of those apartment buildings were not, up to code. Oh, that's supposed to be up to code. No, it isn't, right? It's nice if the owner continuously makes repairs and improvements to keep things up to code. But most of you are sitting in a house that was built in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, 60s that's not up to code right now. It's the codes change. Every 2, 3 years, maybe the electrical or the plumbing or the construction codes are changing. So we don't always put homes up to code, right? So people are buying homes that are not up to code right now. But when a new property is built, it's supposed to be up to code at that very certain moment. But an inspector, a building inspector, could sign off on a property that says it's up to code, and then a day later, who knows what's in the industry, that they're just coming out with new building codes for electrical, okay, or for plumbing, or for whatever it might be, okay. And so that's kind of a weird thing that some people say, well, it's supposed to be up to code. Well, who told you that? That's usually like your uncle, or your father, uncle, or it could be a not too, I guess, but it's or your friend that just bought a house and they think that they kind of know it all type of thing, right? So just know that it's not always, people are not buying houses up to code, right? So that's how that works. Now, permits, right? Permits are when somebody wants to build a structure or alter or repair an existing building. They're usually going to get a building permit, right? And the town officials are going to be made aware of the new construction or alterations and are going to verify compliance with the building codes and zoning ordinances. So once again, yes, when you go to build something new or change something, that's when it's supposed to be up to building code, right? So, if you're putting in a new outlet, they're not going to expect you to use the same cloth wiring that was used in 1920 in the rest of the house. They want you to, right? They want you to use the same, the new wiring, that's the Romex, that's up to code, right? And so that building inspector is going to closely examine the plans and conduct periodic inspections of the work to ensure that the construction complies with relevant ordinances and codes. And then once the completed structure has been found satisfactory and inspected, that's when you get a certificate of occupancy or an occupancy permit, right? That's when somebody can actually live in that property. And with new construction, usually that lender is not going to give you the clear to close unless you have a CO or a certificate of occupancy or an occupancy permit, right? And that means that it's suitable for habitation, and it must be issued before anyone moves in and before the lender will allow the closing. Does that make sense? They even have things like, for safety reasons in California, that a water heater has to be strapped in place for protection in an earthquake, right? They have things for the wonderful world of the ADA. Okay. And, if the construction of a building or alteration violates a deed restriction, maybe the building permit will not cure this violation. So a deed restriction. So let's just say you buy a house in a historic area, right? And the town says, yeah, you can put up this this porch on the side of the home, this 3-season porch. Okay. And they give you the permit for it. But the historic district says, no, that's going to change the look or character of it, and that it's not going to be approved by our board. And so then you wouldn't be able to put it up. That's a private restriction or a deed restriction. Does that make sense? So you got to be careful, and you understand to know what's on the deed, what's in the deed of a property when you are buying a property. Okay, let's do a video check, my friends. Let's see here. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, Liz, you got back just in time. Bam. All right, is everybody on? All right. Mona Lisa, you're not on. Got to be on video, my friend.
Oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Hold up.
Okay.
All right.
I'm on now?
Let's see. There you go. Bam, you're back.
All right, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Things happen. Don't worry. All right. So everybody understands kind of like, building permits and so forth, right? Who has questions on this part of the unit? Anyone? All right, let's talk about subdivision. So one of the things we had talked about is you need to know the difference between being a subdivider and a developer. Okay, you need to know the difference. So when someone's building a subdivision, there's subdivision in most towns, communities, they're going to have a subdivision and land development ordinance as part of their comprehensive plans. Okay. And some local governments even have higher standards than that. So the thing you want to remember, okay, there's two different kinds of people. Now, sometimes it's the same person. Sometimes it's not. Subdivider, person who buys undeveloped acreage land and divides it into smaller lots for sale to individuals or developers for the subdivider's own use, right? And it will include provisions for the subdivision. So, they buy 100 lots and they figure out, hey, out of these 100 lots, we can build 21 we can build 21 lots. They buy 100 acres and we can build 21 lots. And we can still have a 15-acre open space area, and we can still have room for the streets and for the cul-de-sacs and all that good stuff. And they really know how to work with the town on the subdivision ordinances. They know how to use surveys, and they're really good at that. And then you have a person who's a developer who's going to improve the land. Isn't that interesting, right? So we always say that. That's part of the whole real estate gig, is to say that as human beings, whenever we build something, we improve the land. Okay? That's an improvement. It could be a road. It could be storage. Storm drains. It could be barns. It could be houses. It could be industrial buildings, whatever it might be. But a developer who might also be the subdivider, they construct buildings or other improvements on the land. It's more like construction on the subdivided parcels. So does that make sense to everyone? Who's got questions on that? Anyone? Anyone have questions, not sure about what that means and all that kind of good stuff? So, once again, they might try to trick you on the difference between a subdivider and a developer. So you need to know that. All right.
So basically the subdivider just divides up the land and sells it off, and the developer can be the subdivider, but also improves the land with construction and subdivided on the subdivided parcels.
Exactly. You got it.
All right.
Are subdividers usually companies or individuals?
I don't know. The ones that I know are individuals, but
Gotcha.
sometimes they'll work for an engineering firm.
Gotcha.
Like you might buy like 100 acre. Let's just say you bought this 25 acres and you just own this land. You're not sure what to do, how to do it. Well, you can go to these different companies or, individuals. They're like engineering firms type of people and say, hey, listen, I want to know what's the most number of, I want to put a subdivision here of condos, and can you help me put together the whole plan of the land development plan and know how to do this, and so that I can then go to the town, right, and give my presentation to get this subdivision approved.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, they're doing that in my neighborhood, right? Or I own that.
What are they trying to build?
They building houses,
What town you live in?
Norwich,
Kind of houses they building?
single families.
Are they government funded, or is it really just a developer going in there and building a bunch of houses?
It's a developer. The lot holds 5 houses. Right now they building the 3rd one.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, they
Well, that's
got room
good.
to put 2 more.
Good. I mean, that's what we need. We need these builders to be able to build some single family homes for people. All right. Land development plan. Right. So like we talked about, you're going to put together this, the subdivider is going to go through the process of land planning, right? I mean, there's all kinds of laws and rules that, is beyond us, but it might be that, 10% has to be open space. All right. The streets have to be a certain width. The cul-de-sac has to be a certain circumference. Each town, like what I remember back in the day, Coventry has gone back and forth. And I don't even know what it is right now, but one minute it was that you had to have at least a half an acre to build a house. Then they changed it to be like 1 acre. Then they were trying to make it 2 acres. Then they went back to 1 acre. Then they went lower. I think they might have gone lower, or they stayed at 1 acre. And it depends on the town council or the town management and what they're trying to push at that particular moment. You see what I'm saying? So it depends on a lot of different things. So once again, in plotting out the subdivision according to the local planning and zoning controls, the subdivider determines the size as well as the location of the individual lots. Sometimes they have to create an ingress and an egress, right? The maximum or minimum size of a lot will be regulated Most subdivisions are laid out by use of lot and blocks. An area of land is designated as a block, with the area making up the block and then divided into individual building lots. The land itself has to be studied, usually in cooperation with a surveyor, so that the surveyor takes advantage of natural drainage and land contours, right? That will be important. The subdivider has to provide for utility easements, like where is the electric going to be, and or the natural gas, and or the water lines, and maybe the sewer lines and all that good stuff, right? And they might even have to, depending on how big and what the town is all about, they might even have to do an environmental impact report. You know, what's that going to do to the environment? What's the proposed development? What will it have on the surrounding area? What's the increased tax burdens, both inside and outside the subdivision? Will there be a higher demand for public services, right? And if there are, right, then the local government might want to impose impact fees. And impact fees are charges made in advance to cover anticipated expenses involving off-site capital improvements such as additional water and sewer facilities, new roads, and school expansions. So I remember years ago when I had a house built, the builder was told, oh, you know, here's what the impact fees are, and here's what you need for reserves and all this good stuff. And then come to find out he was using that money, and he ended up going to jail for a little bit. And I like the guy. He was a pretty cool dude. Every time I went to go, see him, he'd give me some espresso and some Italian cookies. So I thought he was pretty cool. But he was using the money that he wasn't supposed to use, so that wasn't right. That wasn't good. Oh man. All right. So usually the subdivider is going to draw up a plat map, right? And this plat map is a detailed map illustrating the geographic boundaries of individual lots. It's going to show like the easements, like how far back from the street it has to be. It might have like again, it's going to have public easements, where the lines are for each lot and block, where the streets are, and all that kind of thing. And once it's and most of the time, right, what we've seen is now we have it gets approved by the town, and now we have a plat map recorded. And that's usually used to describe individual pieces, parcels of land. And it gives us like the exact description of the land. So again, people are buying houses and all that kind of thing every single day without doing a survey. Now, you can get a survey done before you buy land or a house if you want to. But these days, it might cost you $2,000. And these days, it might take you 2-3 weeks to get a surveyor out there. Most people don't do that. Most people, they will go to the town records and try to figure it out where exactly your land is. But if you don't trust it, or you want to go to, you want to get a survey done, you can do that. Does that make sense to everybody? Who's got questions on that? All right. So we even have this thing called subdivision density. All right. So zoning ordinances typically dictate minimum lot sizes. So like I said, 1 minute, oh, the town says you need to have at least an acre. Next minute, half an acre's fine. I mean, there's lots in East Hartford that are 0.1 acres and there's houses on them. It just depends on, how long ago and, what might be needed. Maybe there's a minimum lot area, maybe there isn't. But for example, right, A zoning restriction may set the minimum lot area on which a subdivider can build a single family housing unit at 10,000 square feet. Right? Now, 10,000 square feet might sound pretty good to you, right? But this would mean that a subdivider can build 4 houses per acre. So one of the numbers, I don't say you have to remember a lot of the numbers, but for concept and understanding, you might want to write this down, right? There's 43,560 square feet in an acre. Once again, there's 43,560 square feet in an acre. So you should kind of know that. Not kind of, you should know that. And if they say, well, you need to have at least 10,000 square feet, well, you do 43,560 divided by 10,000, and that will give you 4.36 or 4 lots. So that will tell you how many lots you can have in that particular area. But remember, that's not including maybe all the other things that need to be taken care of. Okay. So that's why you need to have someone in your pocket or hire someone that knows what the laws, what the rules are. Make sense? All right. Now, many zoning authorities, they establish special density zoning. And we talked about that. They might restrict the average number of houses per acre, right? Or, and they have to make sure they're in compliance with the average number of units in the development. That might be gross density. So it just depends on different things, density zoning, how many houses or lots or units you can have in the development, or how many you can have per acre, right? And that, or how much land you can use, right? So there's all different ways of looking at it. Does that make sense? All right. Now, in the response to the need for housing and the lack of suitable undeveloped land, many communities now allow and promote the addition of an ADU. There it is in italics. So should you remember it? Should you get to know that? Yes. All right. Promote the addition of an ADU on a single family residential lot. This means that a permit could be issued for a garage conversion or construction of a separate livable space. And all you really need to do, well, it's not as easy as I'm going to say it, but you would go either on Google or Bing, and you would put whatever, you would put Norwich ADU or Bolton AD, building zoning for having an ADU in Bolton, Connecticut, building an ADU in East Hartford, Connecticut. And you have to start doing your research, right? And see which towns will actually seem like they're open to it. Sometimes some towns you're going to find a lot of information online, some towns you're not. But ultimately, what you want to do is go to the town hall and talk to the planning and zoning and the building department and find out what are they going to give you a hard time? Sometimes you go to the building, planning and zoning or building departments in some of these towns, and they're very helpful and they understand that they work for you, the taxpayer. And sometimes you go to some of them and they have their own little agenda, right? Maybe they live in town, maybe they don't, and they don't have very much helpfulness. But that, if you're interested in that sort of thing, that's what you would do.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. If you are allowed to do an ADU, do you have to pay more taxes on your property?
Oh, yeah. Everything you do to your property, you got to pay more taxes on.
Oh, shit.
Unless you're taking something down.
Oh.
You put a shed on your property, you're supposed to pay more taxes. You finish your basement, you got to pay more taxes. You widen your driveway, oh, you did an improvement, you're supposed to pay more taxes. Yep. Everything you do, you're going to pay more taxes. And then they might have some towns, we're going to have certain rules. Like you said, some towns will say, well, it can only be an ADU for family. Like it can't be officially rented to someone where they pay. Some of them are going to say it can only be for family members type of thing. Some of them are going to say it cannot be short-term rentals. Some of them are going to say it can't be long-term rentals. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Who has questions on that? All right. So we talked a lot about the town. Now let's talk about private. Non-governmental private land use restrictions, covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And so when we talk about this part of the unit, we're actually gonna stop right here. This is where I'm gonna ask Kristen to take off, right? To take off from here on Thursday. But the thing that I want you to do is, if you don't know about it, does anybody know about Celebration, Florida? Right? A couple of you are not. Well, what is Celebration,
Yeah.
Florida?
That the town by Disney?
Yeah. Right. In the 1980s, they took a few hundred or probably a few thousand acres and they made a town.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's incorporated as its own town. But in the beginning, it was built and lots sold and everything by Disney. Now it's incorporated as its own town. But the way that they built it, like when you go to buy a house over there, you're going to get a book that's thicker than this with all the rules and regulations and all the private restrictions. Like, you can only paint your house this many colors. You can have only so much decorations during this holiday or that holiday. If the cherry tree in the front left corner dies, you can only put, another cherry tree at this size there, and you have to put another cherry tree at this size there. Otherwise, after 30 days, you're going to get a fine. So that's how much, they talk about private, private land use controls, right?
Oh, so I have a question because it sounds like that, it's a bunch of control,